So, how do you make it easier for your customers to buy your products and services and use your products and services? And even how do you design services and the sales message so they want to buy them and use them? And we have an expert today who we're going to discover exactly how to sell to the laziest customer. And I love this topic because I think it is brilliant at this time in the marketplace. Our guest today is Ashwin Gulati, our author of Soul Venture, all about the startup culture. And Ashwin, it is so great to have you on the Wealthability Show. Would you please give us a little of your background, how you started talking about this innovative selling process?
Thanks, Tom. It's great to be here. Appreciate this opportunity. So yeah, let me give you a little bit of background on myself and even a little bit about the book and why I wrote it and we can dovetail into this lazy customer um, topic, which I also find very very interesting. So my background really, is in kind of three parts. And first part of my career, I really got into sales and business development and technology in both U.S. and in Europe. I worked for software companies, Dun& Bradstreet and so forth. I lived in England and Spain. Then I moved back to the US. I'm originally from India. I came from India to the US, moved to Europe, then came back to the US. And for the last 30 years, I've actually been involved in just startups, both my own startups. Also, I've been an EIR, entrepreneur in residence for incubators, accelerators, VCs. I've helped SBA do, new programs in technology in Silicon Valley. So I've been living in the startup trenches for 30 years, and I wrote this book, and it's kind of a different book. I don't know if you've fully read it yet, but it's a fusion between a memoir and a knowledge share book. And frankly, I talk about things that people don't like to talk about. Things about success and redefinition of success and why people really do startups. You know, and if you disclose all that information, most investors won't invest in you. But I just put it all out there, after 30 years of experience, and it's been in quite well. And you're right. One of the topics is about lazy customers.
Yeah, so let's talk about this because I actually think consumers are getting lazier and lazier. I think that it used to be that they were willing to work. Books used to be a big deal. We were talking earlier
Yeah,
about
yeah,
people don't read anymore. So how do you make? I mean, that's a perfect example. How do you make a book easy? And a couple of things that I've learned in my experience in publishing books
yeah,
is you have to do an audiobook because
yeah,
that's a lazy person's way to read, and
yeah,
you have to do an ebook because
yeah.
it's easier to pick up your iPad than it is to pick up a physical book. Okay, so
Yeah, I have to
that's
tell
an
you,
example.
I knew this was going to happen when I mean, it took me a long time to write this book, by the way. This is not like I came up with an idea one day. This is, you'd be surprised if I told you it took me 20 years to write this book. And then I knew that, the world had changed. And in some ways, in this long period, I think my book is more and more relevant now than it was, let's say, 5 years ago. But people are more and more different now than they were 5 years ago. And yeah, I knew about ebooks and audiobooks, and my audiobook is coming out in a couple of weeks, by the way. And my ebook came out right away. But I didn't realize how people have actually changed. I mean, I think the brains have really changed to a point where and I don't know what it is. It's not just because they're lazy. I just think I think the human race is going through an evolution here where they can
Social
only
media,
absorb,
technology.
oh yeah, social media, snippets of information. And it's funny now, every time I talk about my book, people ask me, "Hey, do you have an audiobook?" Like
Yep,
first question, right? Not
yep,
the what the book is about. Like, do you have an audiobook, right?
yep.
So yeah, it's coming out, but yeah, people are getting more and more saturated with information, saturated with innovation as well. And so, going away from books to kind of what I talked about in my book regarding this lazy customer profile, what I'm really saying is, and I come from a sales and marketing background. I'm not a tech guy, I'm not a tech innovator. I'm a biz dev innovator. And in meetings, I would always say, I don't care how good the product is, market traction trumps all, right? and technologists would get angry with me, and they would say, "No, if you don't have a product, you can't sell anything." And I'm like, "Well, I'm not sure about that, you know." And
Hey, I grew up in the era of pet rocks. You
okay,
can't
there you go.
actually sell anything.
You can sell anything and then build it and deliver it sometimes.
Exactly.
Um, so I think the example I was using, and the reason and there's a whole chapter on it, and it used to be called customers are slippery. Then I changed it to customers are lazy, and now it's really called the 9X effect. Um, so I was really referring to innovation. People will say, "Oh my God, I got this best technology in the world, this best idea, and it saves companies money, it saves them time. Here's the ROI. It's all documented. They've talked to a couple of customers. Even a couple of customers are using it. And it's like, this is a no-brainer. And then they scale up their sales team, they scale up their marketing activities, and wait a minute, it's just not moving as fast as the data shows, right? And the two reasons for that in my mind. And one is that you know, customers just don't like to change. Even if they raise their hand and say, "Oh yeah, this is a great product," there's this 9X effect. And the 9X effect, it was written in Harvard Business Review one time, and it's about the reality is that the entrepreneur and the customer are 9X separated from
Yeah.
reality, right? The entrepreneur believes his or her product or service is 9 or 3 times better than the competitor, and and they believe that it's 3 times more valuable to the consumer, right? And this is like they're like 9 times separated. And so what happens? Takes longer,
Yep.
costs more, sales cycles are longer, you know. So I've learned this where, God, unless you've got 10, 20 customers in the bag and they're calling you and reordering, you actually haven't really hit that scale button yet, you know.
Yeah.
Uh,
So let's talk about so what I want to talk about. There's two, I think, two issues here.
yeah,
One is communicating to the customer in such a way.
right.
And I know you've used the example of Prius,
Yeah, it's a
right?
great
But
example. Yeah,
communicating to the customer, let's talk about that, but communicating to the customer as to how simple it is and how easy it is.
yeah.
And then second of all, actually delivering easy. Those are two different things, right? I mean, one is communicating it, one is delivering it. Let's talk about the communicating because I think that's very important for people to find it to be easy, that they're hearing that it's easy. And if you would, talk a little bit about the Prius example, because I think that's a really good example.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many examples. I'm going to talk to you about a pizza example too. You know, Prius, I think, was like a great innovation, right? In the end of the day,
Sure.
though, what the customer saw was a very simple thing called gas mileage. They were like, "Oh my God, I was doing 25 miles per gallon and now I'm doing 50 miles per gallon." They were still going to the gas station, they were still pumping gas, but the technology was kind of hidden, right? I mean, they were
Right.
saying, of course, it was not hybrid, hybrid, hybrid. It was not like, let's talk about hybrid. Let's talk about gas mileage, right? That's what the consumer really wants. A better example, I think, is Google. So in my first company back in this is a this is a funny story. In the first company back in 1997, I was sitting in University Avenue in Silicon Valley, and I saw this little flag of a com of a balcony. It said "Home of Google," and I looked at my business partner. I said, "Look at these, idiots. Do you think the world needs another search engine?" There were like 17 search engines at the time, right? These guys didn't know what they're doing. And how wrong was I? What they did was they had this incredible innovation in the back end, right? But all the customers did what they did on Yahoo or AltaVista. They just typed in something in a box, right?
Yep.
So I think it's not about actually communicating. It's almost about not communicating. It's almost like saying, "Hey, life's not going to change. It's just going to get better," right? And I think that's where, when people say to me, "I got this great product," and then I look at their user interface and it's this new way of doing things, even though it's so 10 times better, it scares me, because people don't want to change their habits as much. So I think that the Prius is a great example because they sold so many cars and they still do. And I mean, I even own one. It's like the gas mileage is amazing. It's just like but the innovation was amazing, right? It's hybrid
Yeah.
technology, which didn't exist before. So I think that's kind of the a good example of it. It's like, when you want your kids to, I put this in my book as well, when you want your kids to eat kale or spinach or something, you put it underneath that cheese of the pizza to start off with. So it's like they don't want, they want to just have the old experience with new innovation. That's, I think, what the key of the laziness really is, you know.
Right. Let me give you a really difficult example. And I
Okay.
mentioned this to you earlier, but this is a really tough one because I'm in the tax planning business. Yeah, I have a franchise of CPA-based tax advisory services.
Mhm.
And people go, oh, taxes are scary. Taxes are difficult. Einstein even said it's the most difficult subject in the world to understand. There's Albert Einstein who said
Right.
that. How can I possibly understand it? And from my standpoint, I think taxes can be fun, easy, and understandable. So, how do you? And so, part of the issue is talk about people hating to change. They have an accountant, right? And an
Right.
entrepreneur has an accountant. Everybody has their CPA. Their CPA is not serving them, but they don't want to change.
Right.
So let's walk us through. So what would you do to go, okay, well, let's make this so it's a change. It's doing the same thing, but it's a lot easier and a lot better. That's what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah, now I was scared you were going to ask me that question because I'm not a tax guy, right? Although it is tax
You don't
season,
need to be a tax guy.
you know.
You're a
But
sales
let's
guy.
talk
That's
about
what I'm looking for. The sales guy.
let's talk about before I answer the question, which by the way I don't know how to answer yet. Let's talk about what the experience really is, right? Let's see
Yeah.
what my experience is, right?
Yeah.
And I've been using the same tax guy for a long time, so they have two experiences. That one is I gotta damn prepare for that stuff, right? I gotta
Yep.
prepare for the tax person, right? And that takes a long time because it's my job to pull all that information together so the tax CPA can do his or her job. And then the second experience is I gotta pay or get paid in the end, right? I get a refund or I gotta pay, right? Those are the
Yep.
two. That's my experience, and they're both like, second one you don't have much control over, but the first one is on the other one is you have to pay the CPA, right? You got to pay them a couple thousand
Yeah.
dollars or whatever it is. So those are three things that go through my mind, when I'm doing my taxes. So, well, I don't know. I mean, I think if there was a way to somehow streamline that delivery of information to the CPA. I don't know what that is. I mean, I have to go to all my accounts. I have to, download all the 1099s. There's got to be some way. Um,
There is. We're working on that. So that
yeah,
actually goes. So that goes to the product size, and I want to get to that.
yeah,
How do you make the product easier, the delivery easier, and that goes to the product side. But what about the communication side of hey, and I'm going to go to the second one where you say something that is commonly said, which is, well, I don't have much control over whether I pay a refund, and I would tell you, you have total control over pay or refund. You want a refund, you can do that. We like to say, if you want to change your tax, you have to change your facts, and you can
right.
do it. We can tell you how to do it. But how do you communicate that to make it so simple that people go, hey, would you like a refund instead of paying? I mean, it sounds like maybe it's that simple.
Well, lately you see all these ads on TV now because it's tax season,
Mm-hmm.
H&R Block and all those people are doing, and they're doing the exact same thing what you just said. They're
Yep,
aiming
they
towards,
are.
hey, we're giving last year you got 1,000, this year you're gonna get 5,000 back. Okay, so they're not selling the tax, they're selling the refund.
Selling
Okay,
the refund.
they're selling the refund. So I think it's a little bit of marketing. But if there was one way of doing that and lowering the personal or toll of collecting the
Yeah,
information,
the
I
friction.
think that's the trick. I don't know what it is. Maybe some sort of a magical message that says, "Hey, if you did these three things and had a cup of cappuccino at the same time, then instead of taking 3 hours, you can get it done in 1 hour."
The-
I don't know. And I was, my topic was more at the product side. The service side is so relationship driven and so marketing driven that I think the messaging is key, right? And how do you get your word out? I mean, I'm just curious.
Yeah. So first of all, we make it simple. So my book,
Yeah.
Tax Free Wealth, all it does is make taxes simple.
Right.
And it's simple to reduce your taxes, and you do actually have control. Do you want to pay or do you want a refund? I love that. Sell the refund.
Mhm.
And the other side of that is I think you hit on a big thing. I've noticed that throughout my industry, and I've been in the industry 45 years, is that getting that info together. So we're actually developing that product right now
Okay.
because we do see that as a huge friction. And it's
Mhm.
not just the info for the tax return; it's all of the info. So it's the info for the information we need to reduce your taxes, for the planning, all that kind of stuff, all
Right.
that gathering information. We're actually putting that into a software package because I think that's the future of the system. So let's talk about then products and how do you make the products easy to use?
Right. Well, I think that it goes back to even the previous example, right? As long as we don't have to change the behavior of the customer too much, if they're used to using email, if they're used to using, Excel, whatever they're used to using, if we can just use that behavior to for the new product, I think that's the key. It's when you have to say, by the way, instead of double click, you got to quadruple click, right, to get there.
Right.
That's where I think even if that click is 10 times better for you and saves you three times the money, I think that's the key there
Well,
is
and what Apple did was go one click, right? So they actually
one
did one
click. Yeah, go
better,
the other
make it
way.
that much easier. They went the other direction.
They're going with a voice click,
Right.
So yeah.
Right.
So yeah, I guess it's laziness, it's saturation, it's human behavior. And if you can get your kids to listen to you, you can sell anything to anybody, right? I mean, it's just there, it's all over the map is with innovation right now.
So how do you actually strike that balance? You're developing a product and you
Mhm.
go, hey, this is really cool. Because of course, as the innovator, you're going,
Right.
you get all excited about it. It's really cool, right? This will be fun. And like you said, we talked to two or three clients and oh yeah, that is really cool. That's going to be really awesome. And yet you want to make it so easy that they don't have, like you said, they don't really have to change their behavior. Let me ask you a question. So you talked about Google. AOL, I always found to be very clunky, and
Mhm.
Google was not clunky. That was a
Remember,
big difference,
yeah,
right?
remember Ask
AOL is not
Jeeves?
in business. Google is huge,
Yeah,
right? And it's just not clunky. So part of it sounds like it's just let's not make it clunky.
correct. Correct. I mean, do you remember back then there was Ask Jeeves? I don't know if you
Oh
remember that.
yeah, yeah, I remember
That
that.
was
Of
the
course.
simplest of all. Just ask Jeeves, ask them a
Yep.
question. I think the key though with Google was the algorithms and the innovation
Mhm.
that was under the hood, right? You don't see it, just the
Right.
way you don't see the hybrid technology. So how do you? So here's to answer your question, and here's what I've learned is if you're going to develop a new product, right? Sure, there's a little bit of an issue. You know what an innovator's dilemma is, where if you're inventing something that doesn't exist yet, you can't really ask your customer because they don't even know.
Right.
Like if you're going from flip phone to, smartphones, you're not going to go to a flip phone user and say, "Hey, what should my UI for smartphone be?" They don't know that, right? So, that there's a risk of innovation there. But if you can innovate with the customer upfront, like make them part of the development team or make them part of the product so that it's almost as if it was developed by them, and that could be a good marketing strategy for the future customers because they're not buying from an innovator or a new entrepreneur. They're actually buying from a trusted peer or their support. I think that's number one, right? Is if you can wrap that customer in that early stage and somehow find a way to
Yeah,
incentivize.
your customers then become your beta testers.
Yeah, yeah. No, they become
Development
the
development
developers
partners.
almost.
Yeah.
Almost your developers, right? And the second one, and this is the one that's the hardest, is that early success. You almost have to question your early success, right? It's like if you do this and you get 10 customers, you don't know if these 10 customers are those type of customers that spend the night in front of Apple because they want the new Apple generation, or are they the ones that
Right.
the laggards or the mainstream market, right? And so I've seen that happen to me as well, where you get 10 customers, you're like, oh my God, let's do 100, then let's do 1,000, and then there's something happens at customer 22, like things kind of slow down a little bit. So I think, just nailing it before scaling it is what I call it, is really important. And if you can just spend time with the customers, do case studies, have them as references, I think
So take your
long
time
term
with it.
wise,
It sounds like you want to take your time with it. Don't rush it.
which is very hard to do when you have financial pressures,
Right.
when you have excitement around the product, oh my God, don't miss the boat, what if competition comes in and takes over the pie? It's a fine balance, right? But I think in the end of the day, the message is that the customers aren't as open to change, even if the ROI is so clear. That's what I think I'm seeing.
So what I'm hearing you say is don't try to don't try to force the customer into that ROI.
Yeah.
Make it maybe bring the ROI down a little bit if you need to make it easier for the customer to use it.
Yes, correct. 100%. It's like because they don't want to learn something new. They want to just save money and get better gas mileage and just that's all they want. They just want to go in a little white box and do a search.
Do you think that's part of the issue with electric cars? Is that you have to plug them in, you have to wait, you have to do all that. It's different, even though they did put the plug in the same place as the gas tank would be, gas pump would be, which is smart. But it has been a very slow adoption.
I don't know. I'm trying to figure that one out. Are you talking about hybrid electric versus hybrid
I'm
gas?
just talking about electric.
I think electric.
Is it just the mileage? Is it just that you
Yeah,
can't
it's
go
a
far enough?
combination of things in my mind, right? And like, why did I not buy an electric car yet, right?
Right.
Because, well, I have to like make all these other decisions now. I gotta put solar panels on my roof. I gotta, if I have to go to LA, I gotta, is it really gonna take me 6 hours or 9 hours? Oh, instead of paying $60,000 for a car, I gotta pay 90,000 now because it's more expensive. Yet, so I have to do my ROI, and then everybody's telling me that those mileage, those ranges aren't really what they are because that's if
Because
nobody's
they're
in the
not.
car and your air conditioning is not on. And so
Right.
I'll just wait a little bit because my Prius is giving me 55 miles per gallon or something like that. It's not about electric cars, it's just about the decision process, right? And I believe it's all going to be, electric cars in the future and its price is going to come down and you'll be driving and the roads are going to,
It'll be
charge
a
your
thousand
batteries.
miles.
Yeah. So I think, I'm not saying, but the adoption is much slower. You're right, isn't it? It's much slower than the graphs showed 5 years ago.
Right. So how is there anything you can do? Like take a sales funnel, right? Which is the
Yeah.
whole idea is to lead a customer down a path,
Yeah.
right? And you're trying to make it easy for them because you're assuming they're going to be lazy and they're also going to always choose the cheapest option, right? So if they want a piece of you, this is what we say when we're on stage is that
Right.
they want a piece of you, they're going to take the cheapest piece of you. And if that's a book, they're going to take the book versus your program because there's a big cost difference. So don't sell both the book and the program at the same place because
Right.
they always want the cheapest part. So can you discuss like how that sales funnel works for that lazy customer?
I think there's like the difference between the sales funnel and the sales pipeline, right? So I think the sales funnel is kind of like what experience they go through until they get to the buying decision. Okay. Um, I think that the sales funnel doesn't really change. It just slows down in my mind. It becomes the sales funnel is a sales funnel, no matter if it's an electric car or non-electric car. It's the same
Right.
funnel, but it's not as it's a little wider now, right? It's instead of it going faster down, it just goes slower down. So I think the sales cycle is longer. So you have to adjust your business for that. But I think that the way to get the customer through the sales funnel is to make that sales funnel look as close to the old sales funnel. To make it look as if, what, you're getting the same experience. It's just the fact that guess what? You don't have to stop at a gas station anymore. You don't have to pay $5 a gas or $4 a gallon for gas anymore. And I think that the it's almost like you have to superimpose the old over the new so that the customer can reframe their mind and know that they're actually going through the old experience as well. Because in the end of the day, it is still a car, right? It's still the same experience. You're still going from point A to point B. So, I mean, that's a good question, but I think my experience is I think it's called reframing strategy in sales, right? Where you just reframe it back to where what the customer understands. Try to show them the new thing too much is it go either way, it could go either way. Some people are, oh, great, beautiful, or something like, wait a minute, right? So
So
you got to
in an
re
electric car, if the only difference was they went to the service, the 7-Eleven or the service station, whatever. They go to the convenience store basically because that's what they are. You go to the convenience store and instead of putting gas in the car, you plug in the electric, but it takes the same amount of time. It
There you
just
go.
costs less.
There you go. Yeah.
Then you'd be fine,
I
right?
think
That's
you'd
all it
be,
is. You're going to get the same mileage. You're going to go the same distance. You're still going to get that 500 miles or 400 miles
yeah.
that your gas tank was used to. Now, but instead of being $4 a gallon, it's going to be $1.50 basically a
Right.
gallon for the equivalent mileage.
So now the customer only has to think about one thing, which is, oh, I'm paying
Yes.
$20,000 more for the car, but I guess what? It'll pay off in 2 years because I'm
Right.
paying X a month in gas, right? But right now they have to think about a whole bunch of things, right? They have to think about where do I charge it? How long does it take?
Right. How far can I go?
How far can I go? I like to go on trips. Do I need two cars? Should I
Too
have an
many
electric?
decisions. It
Yeah,
sounds like it's too many decisions that
yeah,
you have to bring down the number of decisions so that it's really just the easy decisions. Like do I want to pay less? Yes. Okay. Am I willing to sacrifice maybe a little bit? Maybe I'll instead of 5 minutes at the station, I'm 15 minutes at the station. I might be willing to do that little bit of a sacrifice. I'm not
yeah.
willing to stay there for 45 minutes.
Do you know what's the easiest decision?
What's that?
No decision. That's the easiest decision.
So how do you incorporate that?
Well, as you said, in that car example, if you eliminate all the variables and bring it down to just one, and now all you're doing is stopping at the gas station and, in less than 2 minutes, you're doing some sort of switcheroo or something like that. I don't know what the technology is, but, then the decision is just one decision, right? And it's sad because if the customers just slow down just a little bit, and cars is one example, but software is a really another. It's a
Sure.
very, I mean, they could save companies millions of dollars, millions, and the decision process sometimes. I remember I used to sell, decades ago, enterprise software, and you had to understand the company's financials and HR and everything. And the sales cycle was like 6 months, a year of just decision making, But in the end of the day, it's an intangible product and it saves the company a lot of money. So, but car is a different example. It's just a more of a faster decision historically, right? For people to make.
Right. 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 Right.
So
Right.
yeah,
Right.
this 9X effect is interesting. It's people are very far removed from the reality of innovation.
So if we want to adapt our because most businesses we already have our products, right? We're not necessarily a startup. I mean, yes, we may be starting up new products on a regular basis,
Yeah.
but if we're thinking about whether it's a new product or an existing product, can you give us like what are two or three steps you would take to make sure that you're going to appeal to the laziest customer?
Well, first of all, you need to know how the laziest customers operate, right? Yeah, if you know their experience, the first thing I would do is see how my product can talk to that experience. Okay. If they just like to sit on the couch and click on TV, well, Netflix made it big because Netflix, is doing great technology, streaming, movies and everything, but the consumer is just clicking the remote control the way they did, all their lives, right? So I think the first step is to fully understand from the customer standpoint what the experience is, not from the technology or the innovation standpoint, right? And then secondly, I think as we said earlier, simplify, 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 right? I mean, it's like, and I always people not just because of the laziness of the customer, but but because of the saturation and so much
Sure.
information, right? That I think that having it, just neatly packaged and simplified, and then converted into their original experience, and then say, oh, by the way, by doing this, you're going to the benefits are, and just give them like three benefits, not 20, right? And going to save X. Gas is going to go from 5 to $1.50. You're going to save this much time, and guess what? Life is still the same. It's almost like why wouldn't you? Type of a scenario, right? So I think those are the key things that I've seen. And I work with so many entrepreneurs, so many first-time entrepreneurs, and I mean, brilliant people, well-funded. Um, great teams, great products, great IP, and there's this like, gosh, why isn't sales picking up? I mean, all the boxes are checked. So this story or this phrase that always takes twice as long and costs twice as much, I believe is not because of the development of it, but it's because of the sales and market traction of it,
Got it.
right? That's my
Got
experience.
it.
Yeah.
It's that interface with the customer. It's
Yeah.
that what are they thinking, not what are you thinking?
Well, I'd love to know what you're going to do with the tax, how you're going to innovate on the tax side, because that's a good news. It's a it's a pain,
Right? There's a
the
there's a
pain you
lot of
want to
pain
solve.
there. There's a lot of friction there. So you take that away, that's a big deal.
Yeah, that is a big deal.
Yeah, it is. It is a big deal. So stay tuned for that. That's coming.
Okay.
Stay tuned. It's not that far off. So that's good. So the book is Soul Venture, and I love that you combined your personal history, along with the whole startup, because I think that makes a book so much easier to read when there's a story involved.
Yeah.
And of course, you're, as you said, you're a sales and marketing guy, so you're all about storytelling in the first place. And just remember when we get that story right, I mean, that's really what we're talking about. Do we
Yeah.
have a simple story? Not that, hey, look, it's great technology, but you just increased your gas mileage, reduced your expenses by 50%, right?
Right.
You just increased it, you doubled your gas mileage, or you reduced your gas consumption by 50%. And
Right.
look, this is all you're doing, right? And it's got, on top of that, by the way, it has more power, which is
Exactly.
true,
Yeah.
right?
It's true. It is.
You
Yeah, it's more fun.
you get into a Prius and you go, whoa, this is not like a Toyota. This is
Right.
actually has power behind it because of
Right.
that electric boost to it.
Exactly.
And it's a little surprising the first time you do that, because I remember that many, many years ago, the first time getting into a Prius that I'd rented in Europe.
Yeah,
And
and
going,
even
wow,
like electric
it has a
cars right
lot of
now,
power.
acceleration is unbelievable
Yeah,
because it doesn't have to
exactly.
go through the whole process to get to the wheel, right? It just goes straight to the wheel, right?
So you give your customers a surprise benefit that they're not expecting. That I think that's a huge bonus when
But no
you
one's
can.
marketing that.
No,
Oh, I had acceleration, zero to 60 in 4 seconds instead of 4.5 seconds. No one really is
right,
marketing. It's just a surprise benefit, as you said.
right, exactly, and I love that. Ashwin, so where can we go besides buying your book? Where can we go to get more information about what you're doing?
Well, you can obviously I'm online on LinkedIn. My name Ashwin Gulati. I'm on Facebook. You can go to soulventurebook.com, and that is kind of like a sub page of my website,
Oh, great,
um, which is Matchpoint Ventures. And I pretty much help companies take off and land, and I kind of go in and look at the business from a both personal and a business perspective. And I think that's one of the essence of the book is that it's not just a business journey, but it's also a very deep personal journey that entrepreneurs go through. And a lot of
it
people don't
is.
talk about that. And I think I kind of go through that both from my own personal, experiences of what I went through over the last 30 years and, some of the private confessions of my clients and friends, who, wouldn't say things, in a board meeting or investor meeting, but you know what's going on, and I think it's been really well received, and so you can go to my website online, look me up on Google, and you can definitely get to me.
Great. Thank you so much, Ashwin. And just remember, when we make it easier for our customers to buy,
Yeah,
just think if it's easy for the laziest customer, think how much better it is for your best customers.
exactly.
And when you do that, what will always end up, as you know, you'll always end up making way more money.
That's
And
right.
in the end, paying way less tax. We'll see y'all next time on the Wealth Ability Show. Thanks, everyone.
This podcast is a presentation of Rich Dad Media Network.